Welcome to our Discipleship Pathway module on baptism by water and the Spirit. This module will meet in person for 3 sessions, and the reading materials are divided by these chapters. Chapters 1 through 3, 4 through 7, 8 through 9, plus the prologue and the epilogue with the page numbers. Our videos will be divided by chapter, including the prologue and epilogue, for a total of 11 videos to complete this module. This module utilizes the following United Methodist approved resources for its content. You can read them there. Prologue. Lucy's story. Lucy was 3 years old when her grandmother wanted her to be baptized. She was taken to the local Presbyterian church and was sprinkled by the minister. Lucy's father, however, was unhappy. He belonged to the Church of England, and he was taught that Presbyterian clergy were not part of the true church. So the next week he took Lucy to his Anglican church, where she was baptized again. Some years later, Lucy's mother had converted to Salvation Army and didn't think much of either the Presbyterians or the Anglicans. So she took Lucy, now 12 years old, to the local citadel or gathering place for presentation under the banner of blood and fire, their version of baptism. A year later, the family moved to the Midwest. The community they moved into had neither an Episcopal church or an army citadel, so the family attended the local Lutheran church. That same year, 13-year-old Lucy joined a class of those preparing to take the vows of church membership. Now, Lutherans believe in the baptism of infants, but this particular pastor was a rebel who looked upon the practices of her own denomination with disapproval. Baptism of infants is a misguided tradition, she believed. She therefore ordered that all the class had to be truly baptized at the font on the day of their vows. Her parents unaware, they watched with confusion as Lucy went with the rest of the group to the font where she was baptized yet again. Some years later, Lucy fell in love with a Southern Baptist and they got married. They moved into a community where they attended a Baptist church that needed a pianist. Lucy loved to play and seemed to be a blessing to the congregation. But the rules were, hands not immersed may not play the Lord's song for them. And so for the 5th time, Lucy was initiated into Christ's church again, now by full immersion. I'm not sure Lucy deserves a place in the Guinness Book of World Records, but this much is certain. Lucy was at the mercy of several assumptions that have been made by Christians from time to time. A, that you are baptized into a particular denomination. That was the assumption of Lucy's father, who believed baptism in the true church was critical. Or B, that baptism with water is not necessary or even helpful. That was the assumption of Lucy's mother, who believed a later, more spiritual ceremony was better. C, that baptism can be only administered properly after a person reaches a certain age. That was the assumption of the rebel Lutheran pastor who baptized her confirmation class. D, baptism only works if it is by full immersion in water, the assumption of the Baptist rules. The people called Methodists have seen these opinions within their own churches too, from lay people and even clergy. Baptism should be understood, but they should be quick to realize that none of these assumptions match their Methodist heritage. Baptism should be understood as having two sides, the human side and the divine side. The confusion in Lucy's stories all have to do with the human side of baptism. Unless we start from the other side, God's side, we will simply multiply the confusion.